Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. I think we have about a minute before we start. I just want to welcome you to St. Louis Community College's International Education Week presentation. My name is Dr. Leila Ghoshi. I am an English professor at St. Louis Community College. Today we will be speaking with Ahmed Salah El-Mahdi, who is a writer of science fiction, fantasy, dystopia, children's literature, and it's such a pleasure to speak with him today. And we will get started soon. I wanted just to say a few things. As many of you may know by now, because we've all been using Zoom quite a bit, please keep your mics muted during the presentation. There will be time for questions after our main conversation, but I do encourage you to post questions in the chat as well. I will try to check the chat when I can and keep up with questions. And also, I invite all of you to post hello in the chat and tell us where you're from, what city you're currently tuning in from. I also invite you to post links that you might be aware of, either of Mr. El-Mahdi's work or of Arabic literature, science fiction, fantasy, and futurism in general. So thank you all for joining us. I think this will be a very rich and productive discussion. So I will share our presentation. Here we go. Okay, so we're ready. So I think we will start now. And Ahmed, welcome. Can you hear me? Can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you perfectly.
Okay, wonderful. So everyone, again, welcome. This session will be recorded, so I will be starting now. So today I want to welcome Ahmed Salah El-Mahdi. I am a great fan of his work, and I am so pleased to be able to welcome him here. Ahmed Salah El-Mahdi is an author, translator, and critic who lives in Cairo, Egypt. He has published 5 novels: Malaz, City of Resurrection, The Black Winter, Reem Into the Unknown, The Greek Papyrus, Envoy of Morpheus, and The Maroon Mirror. He has also published numerous short stories for children. And he is also a translator of other folk tales, and I've been delighted to read some of his translations of Mexican and I believe Chinese folk tales that I've seen. So very prolific and interesting writer. So Ahmed, welcome. And how are you today? How
I am fine, thank you.
How are you doing?
Very good.
Okay. Wonderful. So I'm going to share our presentation. And for students who might be from one of my classes or other, there will be some notes from the slides that you can take. So we will go through the slides. The first point I want to highlight are the novels again of Ahmed. And The Black Winter, Malaz, City of Resurrection, Children of Apocalypse, The Greek Papyrus, Envoy of Morpheus, The Maroon Mirror, Reem Into the Unknown. And Ahmed, I'd just like to know, when did you first take an interest in reading and writing science fiction, fantasy, or futuristic stories?
Actually, it began very early in my life. My grandmother used to tell me the fairy tales of her people, may I say, the stories of uh, something similar to the Thousand and One Nights or the Arabian Nights, as you may know it. So jinn, ghouls, witches and wizards and mythical creatures. I was very fond with her tales. That when I grew up a little, at the age of 5 or 6, I learned how to read. So I was looking for other stories like that. I want to read more, not just listen to some stories. So I began reading translated fairy tales like the Red Riding Hood and Cinderella and Snow White and so on. So I loved this kind of fairy tales, which uh, lead me to love fantasy after that. So I remember when I was very young, I was very obsessed with Harry Potter, the novels and the movies and the video games even. After that, I watched Lord of the Rings and was obsessed with that too. So I realized that I am obsessed with fantasy. So my first, uh, the first time I tried to write a novel, I think I was 12 or 13, and it was a fantasy novel about wizards who lived in their own closed society, something like Harry Potter, but it was in ancient time, not modern time like Harry Potter. So this time I realized that I love fantasy. Then I turned also to science fiction. There was Dr. Nabil Farouk, who wrote a children or may I say young adult series called The Future File, ملف المستقبل in Arabic, that takes place in the future of Egypt with some mysteries and robots and AI and then space travels and planetary wars. So I liked that very much. But
That's,
sorry, I can't hear that.
yeah, what I find interesting about that, so you really had a mix of influences from, say, your grandmother's, maybe your grandmother's generation and stories she had been raised on, plus your access to Western literature as well. And I noticed that in some of your writing. I find that very interesting. Yeah, yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Um, and so tell us more about
Um,
recently translated novel, Reem, Into the Unknown.
Sorry, I didn't hear that. The sound is better.
Oh, the sound.
About
Tell us
Reem.
more about your recently translated novel, Reem, Into the Unknown. I think that is kind of a mix between the Egyptian influences and Western fantasy influences.
Yeah, it was the mix of my grandmother tales and the European fairy tales that I read in my young years. So it has a mixture of the Egyptian environment that we are familiar with, plus the witch in the woods and the little hut and the black cat and the witchcraft that are more akin to the European fairy tales and Grimm brothers and whatnot. So when I tried to write this story at first, it was a short story called The Black Cat, about a man who brought in a black cat as a pet. Then he realized that it has strange behavior. So he tried to get rid of it, and he could not do this because it come back every time. So after I show this short story to my friends, every one of them asking me, "Where does this cat come from? Where will he go after that?" So I sat and thought about it. So I at first I thought about the witch, then the little girl Reem and their connection and connection of Saif with the cat and the witch, and the story grew in my mind. So I expanded into this novella.
Mhm. I love that. So, you created a character that people wanted to know more about. So then you continued the story. I enjoyed that. So that reminds me then, in terms of the community in Egypt, the writing community. I've been very interested to follow some of the discussion of the Egyptian Society for Science Fiction in Egypt. What can you tell me about the mission of the organization? Oh, you know what? We may have lost. I think we lost Ahmed. Well, while we're waiting for Ahmed to rejoin us, I wonder if others have questions that we can discuss in preparation for when he returns. Yes, I'm looking in the chat. There is an Egyptian Society for Science Fiction. And they're quite active, actually. Oh, I see Ahmed is back. Can you hear us? I think your mic, you need to fix your mic.
Oh, sorry. I think there was a disconnect. I don't know why, because the internet is working fine. Okay, I am back with you.
We're all dealing with this new technology we've had to adjust to, so that's perfectly fine. So we were discussing, starting to discuss the Egyptian Society for Science Fiction, and I've been very interested in how active the members are and how supportive you all seem to be of each other. So I'm just curious, can you tell me more about the Egyptian Society for Science Fiction?
Yes, of course. I was first introduced to the society by Dr. Imaduddin Aisha. He introduced me to Dr. Hussein al-Zambili, the head of the society. He is a science fiction author too. And there are many writers and authors in this society. They write and read what each other write and give opinions and critics. And they help us grow in this science fiction field. So we had usually a monthly meeting where we can discuss the new published science fiction novels and the new scientific ideas that are presented in the media or in the internet. So how can you use this scientific idea in a short story? We have this short stories that we usually have every few months. We choose a theme to write about, like the future or the economy or the effect of politics on the societies, like resistant literature and what's on, and so on. And there is also this supportive nature of the society. Everyone, when he publish a book, so I want to read it and review it and give my opinions and give others my opinions, so I can recommend them my new novel or novel. It's a very perfect atmosphere for any Egyptian scientific writer to be part of this society. And my two scientific novels.
I think we've had a pause again. I noticed someone in the chat is asking if there's a distinction between Arabic science fiction and Western science fiction. I will ask Mr. Almadi that question. I wonder if others in the chat would also like to answer that.
Sorry, once again.
No, that's...
Don't know what's happening.
That's quite all right. We were discussing the Egyptian Society for Science Fiction, and you mentioned it sounds like not only is it supportive of writers, but it has discussions on different themes of fantasy, science fiction, and futurism as well. And someone in the chat has asked if there's a difference between Arabic science fiction and Western science fiction. And is that a discussion that you have within the Egyptian Society for Science Fiction?
We try always to have themes that are have connection with our society or society of Egypt and our politics. So you will find resistance stories and novels, and you find Egypt as a part of this global movement of when there is alien invasion, you always find that Americans who are always defending Earth against this invasion. No, we want Egypt to defend this invasion too, if you know what I mean. We have this in Dr. Nabil Farouq's stories. Always, the aliens always land in Egypt in his novel, not in America. We also have a themes of the dystopia. I think we have a lot of novels of dystopia in this past decades and any other Arabic country. Because of the Egyptian revolution, we have faced this regime and this police brutality and what happened after 2011. So we will find that there is a lot of dystopian novels in Egypt after this period of time. You will have novels like Utarid by I'm sorry, wait a minute. Sorry, a novel like Utarid by Muhammad Rabia, which takes place in Egypt after the revolution and speaks about this police brutality and what happened in Egypt. You will have another dystopian novels like The Queue or At-Tabur in Arabic. It published 2013 by At-Tanwir Publishing House, the same publishing house that published Utarid. The story takes place in this atmosphere of, it's very grim about the control of authority. People, it's represented by a gate. People have to stand in a very long queue to gain the necessity of life. And we have novels like The Listeners by Ibrahim Said. It speaks about a civil war in Egypt and a generation that are psychology distorted by the civil war, and there is a listener program who can, they have a programming in their mind. He will hear you and then will forget everything. So they are the perfect people to to listen to you, and you can take out your negative energy with them. So there are a lot of, there are also 2063 by Mu'taz Hassanian in Egypt in the year 2063, of course. It's something like Fahrenheit, where reading is prohibited and you don't have to own books, and people have this test to satisfactory tests. So if you are not satisfied enough with the government, so they execute you, no problem. And I too wrote in this dystopian or post-apocalyptic field with my two novels, Malaz, City of Resurrection, and The Black Winter. Malaz was published first. It takes place in the far future after the destruction of civilization. There are new cities. There is no Cairo or Giza or this modern city. No, there are a lot of new cities. Mainly Malaz in the north and Abydos in the south, where people has returned to worshipping the old Egyptian gods again. And after I wrote it, people asked me, so how comes the world reached this state of devastation? I told them it was a nuclear war and a nuclear winter. So what happens then? Okay, I have to write a story about the nuclear war then. So I wrote the Black Winter. It takes place in the near future, not the far future, after the Third World War, and the nuclear weapon was used in this war. So there is this black clouds of dust and ashes and that. So there is no sun. It's a long, black, dark winter, and people in Egypt try to survive in this atmosphere of the apocalyptic atmosphere of the novel. So I am now writing my third novel in this timeline, if I can say. It's called The Children of Apocalypse, or أبناء القيامة in Arabic. So it's in the nuclear summer, after the nuclear winter has ended. So the atmosphere was damaged. There is no this ozone layer to protect us from the deadly sun rays. So people can no longer work in day or go out or try to find food. And so they live in this enclosed areas underground in hideouts. They can plant this mushrooms that can grow out in dark places and damp places. So I am not finished. I didn't finish it yet, but I hope it can be published in the next Cairo International Book Fair.
All right, thank you. I noticed a question in the chat related to this. Rehab asked, why do you think there are more dystopias than utopias in Arabic science fiction?
I think this is because the future now looks grim. In before that, in the 70s and 80s and 90s, science fiction were more about can you imagine the bright future? I think I wrote an article about the Egyptian writers in 50 and 60. They asked them, how can you imagine the future in the year 2000? And they say, we will have flying cars, we will live on the moon, we live underwater. But now we are 2 decades past the year 2000 and we are nowhere near that. So we think about the future and all we can see is there is no hope. Dr. Ahmed Khalid Tawfiq, who passed away recently, have, I think, about 4 dystopian novels. The first of them was Utopia, ironically named, and it was about in the near future. I think he wrote it in 2008 and said it takes place in 2023, and it's about that the high class of Egypt built a city on the northern coast of Egypt, guarded by American Marines. They live their life with all the luxuries, from drugs to sex to everything, while the rest of the people live outside the city in a very dire state of life. So he started that. I think before him, I can't think of another dystopian novel. So he paved the way to other writers like Muhammad Rabi al-Mu'tarid and the other writers who wrote dystopia and post-apocalypse. I think also Egypt used to be this big player in the political games and still is one of them. So we are very heavily invested in politics here in Egypt. So our novels have this feel of politics in everything. So dystopia is the best field the science fiction Egyptian author can write in.
And would you consider the dystopian novels to be warnings or to be predictions? It sounds like Ahmed Tawfiq's work he wrote in 2008, and that was something like a prediction. What are your thoughts on that?
I think it was a warning. You will. This is what will happen you for. This is what will happen to you if you don't stop this marching of corrupted politics in Egypt. You will live like the people who live outside this utopia. He have a very good quote in this novel in Utopia. The one of the characters of the novel, he hate his people for uh, they don't do anything to change their life. So he said to them, I used to say to them, you dogs, you have slept so far down that you eat dogs yourself. Hadn't I warned you 1,000 times? I told you the theories of Molson and Jamal Hamdan and the prophecies of Orwell and Wells. And every time you dope yourself with hashish and cheap liquors and dozed off, my fury with you like the rage of the prophets of Old Testament on their people. I curse you. But what truly terrified me was their apathy. They just looking for the next woman, the next round of tobacco, and the next meal, oblivious to the state they have reached. I think was the message of Ahmed Khalid Tawfiq in his novel Utopia, that this is what will happen to you if you don't stop this and change it. Also, there is a quote for Muhammad Rabi', the author of Atarid. They ask him about what happened after the revolution of Egypt and aftermath that followed in the grim future of Egypt. Is there a place for hope? In an interview, he said, hope blind us, obscure the facts. And I think that my attempt to get away of what we are now lies in looking at things rationally, giving up dreams, romance, knowing how our defeat has been, and using more ferocious techniques to defeat the other side. The side sees us as an enemy that must be eliminated, and it does so with a strange boldness. And we still remember the days of peaceful demonstrations with endless nostalgia. So it's a warning and a message to the people to warn them. You don't want to live like that. You don't want to see our novels turn true, to change it from science fiction to reality. we don't want that. So you have to change it.
Remember, I asked you recently if you have hope in any of your dystopia. You said it was just a very thin thread.
A glimpse of hope at the end of the planet. A glimpse of light.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Go on. I just say that in my novels, I don't want it to be a complete grim future. I want the reader to feel good at the end of the novel. So don't worry, there will be hope. So in Malaz, the ending is it's happy ending, you may say. And some people say that, okay, it didn't have to be that happy. And at the end of the Black Winter, it was more of an open ending, but the heroes of the story reaches their destination. What happens after that, we don't know, but we know that they arrived there safely. So it's a little hope.
Mm-hmm. It's a little hope. Yeah, okay. There is a question in the chat from Zaina, and actually I'd like to welcome her to turn on her mic and ask. To clarify, she says, what does science fiction as a genre signify in Arabic context or an Egyptian one? And Zaina, can you explain what you mean by signify? Or can you explain your question a bit more? Zaina, can you hear us? Okay, she may not be able to connect, but her question is, what does science fiction as a genre signify in Arabic context or in Egyptian one?
Hi, Layla.
Oh, hi, Zena. Okay.
Hi, thank you for reading my question. I was just wondering if, like, these stories could be told otherwise or differently if it's written in different genre, because Mr. Ahmed was telling us all about like how they are targeting specific themes, characters, stuff like that. Do you think we can tell the story differently if we used like a different platform, like other than science fiction? Because from what I get from what he is saying is that we can address the present or the future through science fiction, but how about the past? If I want to talk about something in the past, could I say it also through the lens of science fiction?
Thank you for your question.
Thank you.
Dr. Seuss used to say that fantasy is how to look at life from the wrong side of the telescope or the wrong end of telescope. So you imagine a new life or a new reality, but in actuality, you are creating your own reality. But you are using different scenes. So I can tell the story in the present day, not in the future, or I can tell it in the past. But what I am critiquing is an idea. So I want to critique the idea of the corrupted power. So I can say that there is a galaxy in a far, far away. There is an empire, evil empire, and so the heroes are fighting the empire like in Star Wars. Or I can say there was the Mongolian Empire that conquered 2/3 of the earth. Or I can speak about today. There are a lot of corrupted countries and corrupted politics, so we can speak about them. But you can expand the horizon of the reader by telling him the story through the lens of science fiction or fantasy. So you can't imagine he can. There is a saying in Arabic that we say الاعتياد يقتل الغرابة. So we say that when you are become familiar with something, you lose the feeling of strangeness. So this is all familiar. Okay, I don't feel that it's strange anymore. But when I show it to you in a different setting, so you can see, oh no, this is wrong. Those people are surely corrupted because those are not the people you are used to. So you can then use this and apply it to your reality, and then you say, oh, okay, I think this man is very like this empire from this science fiction novel. So they must be bad too. So you use the fantasy and science fiction to expand his horizon, to make him think deeper and look in the little details.
Okay. Yeah, so it creates some distance, in a sense, to for us to look at things in a new way. So I just want to come back to what you had mentioned about, I think you said the aliens always seem to land in Egypt. Did you make that? You made a comment earlier. Someone had said the aliens always seem to land in Egypt. We had a question about, or there was a mention of colonialism in the chat. I wonder, would the aliens be symbolic of kind of the interaction with the rest of the world that Egypt has, encountered really over the centuries? Or does that come from a different impulse?
I think Egypt has the most strange relation with aliens. Everyone say alien built the pyramids and stuff. So we are familiar with aliens more than anyone else. But not all the stories are about aliens conquering us or us conquering the aliens. there are some stories about a friendship of an Egyptian man and an alien man. So he, after his planet was conquered by another evil empire, so he asks the help of his Egyptian friend and his team in the stories of the future file by Dr. Nabil Farouk. So they went there and held him. So there are themes of friendship in this novel, not always that all aliens are evil. No, some of them are friendly, as it seems, and some of them were not like the regular form. They are not this two hand, two legs kind of thing. There was a story about an alien who was, you can see him by your own eyes, but he can enter the mind and control the bodies of the humans. And he was actually exiled from his planet, and he is looking for another place to live. And you hate him at first, but then you sympathize with him. And so what happened to his original planet? Why did they exile him? And so on. So there are some interesting themes in this alien novels, not only the planetary world and the space opera.
Very interesting. I'm noticing a question in the chat. I wonder if Zemdi would like to ask the question by voice. I can read it, but then if you have something further to say, Zemdi, you're welcome. Ahmed, the question is, has this genre gained the same amount of readership and critical attention as other forms of Arabic literature? Do they just represent an Arabic adaptation of Western dystopian classics, or has Arabic sci-fi pursued a completely different path? So, would you like me to read that again, or?
No.
Okay.
I think the most famous genre here in Egypt is actually horror. According to the statistics, there are more readers of horror fiction here in Egypt than any other genre. And that takes us back to Dr. Ahmed Khalid Tawfiq. He wrote his series Paranormal. It was recently adapted into Netflix TV show about the elements of horror and mythological creatures and whatnot. So there are more horror authors and readers in Egypt than fantasy and science fiction. But after the revolution, science fiction gained some attention from the readership. So I hope it will be expanded in the future, but it's now, I think it is still a niche genre if we talk about the public opinion and the average reader. What was the other part of the question?
It was, so one part was, has it gained the same amount of readership? You asked that. But other forms of Arabic literature, such as, for example, non-science fiction literature, like the literature of Ghassan Kanafani, for example, is more rooted in real historical events. Some of the other recent noted writers are dealing with more real events than the scientific events. So
what was the last part again? Sorry.
They deal with more real on-ground events than the science fiction fantasy. And I think you partly answered that question. But the other part of it was, do they just represent an Arabic adaptation of Western dystopia, or are they their own original dystopia?
I think some of it are very original ideas. So the uh, Utopia by Ahmed Khaled Tawfiq, you can't imagine it to be an adaptation of the Western dystopian literature, because it has this Egyptian feeling of it. The people who are use this the mindset of Egyptian people in the novels, their way, their habits, and so on. So it's Egyptian and the feeling. If you translate it in English to English and it is already translated and read it, you will have the same feeling that it speaks about certain people. An idea like Al-Mustami'un by the listener by Ibrahim Said. It is. I don't think I read anything in English like it before. The idea of people who will listen to you and forget everything, and people trying to hack it and enter your mind. So it's a mixture of cyberpunk and dystopia and espionage and hacking. So it can be a techno thriller mixed with dystopia. So there are some original ideas. Utarid and Mercury and Q at Tabur. I think they are dealing with the society after the Egyptian revolution. So it's a very specific to Egypt. So you can't say this is an adaptation of Western dystopia. But there are other scientific novels here in Egypt. You will read them and you feel them. Okay, it's look like the movie The Alien, or it looks like. It is from Star Wars. There are these stories, of course. Some people watch something or read something, or okay, I want to make something like, but it's not exactly fan fiction. I want to make my own story with my own characters. Okay, some science fiction novels are you will feel they will give you this Western feeling. I know, but other scientific Egyptian novels. Dr. Ahmad Din Aisha, one example, his short stories on Mars, they are dealing with Arab and Muslims on Mars and their society and their traditions and habits. So Dr. Ahmad Din Aisha, for me, is a perfect example for Arabic and Muslim science fiction with his stories on Mars.
And I just I want to note real quick. I had already mentioned Imad Adina Isha in the chat, but we are fortunate to have him. He has a wonderful story in the Palestine 100 anthology, and as you mentioned, other stories as well. And perhaps we'll have Mr. Aisha come and visit with us someday too. I wanted to follow up on something you said about horror. Why do you think the Egyptian public is so interested in horror fiction?
I think because Egyptian most of them are really superstitious. They believe in black magic and jinns who can harm you, and people who can summon them and inflict damage on you and do evil things. So we can find this people who use pieces of paper and use a small pen. So I wrote your name on the paper and I can hit you with the pen, something like the voodoo doll. And people who do something they call a'mal, they write some stuff on paper and put it in a graveyard. So when the government do a campaign to clear graveyards, they found all stuff of all sorts of hair and teeth and nails and so on. So they are part of the victim and they want to use it. So in this environment that is fraught with black magic and jinn and dark wizard who want to harm you, they think they can this Dajjal or this magician can make someone separate. They can separate between the man and his wife. So they can make other marriage, and they can give him children, and they can make him unable to have children. This is what make people interested in this horror stories. They are for them a mixture of their own fears. Horror stories, they say that they help us to reflect on our own fears. That's why a lot of this horror novels that are popular in Egypt, they are not cosmic horror or gothic horror. No, they are jinn and bad and haunted houses and people who will hurt you or harm you with magic. So they read about these things because they partly believe in it very much. So it's part of our culture. I don't think I think you can say 90% of Egyptians believe in this black magic and this sort of thing. So it's part of our culture and our nature, I can say.
That's very interesting. It's rooted in cultural folk tales and superstitions. But can you explain to those who might not know what the jinn are?
Oh, I see. The jinn are something like they are these beings that we can't see them, but they can see us. We can't touch them, but they can hurt us, but they have to be invoked or summoned. So it's something like the elves in the Arabian fairy tales, where they kidnap little children and do bad stuff to people, or something like they are demons or devils. But devils or demons in the Arabic culture is part of the whole race of jinn. They are good jinn and bad jinn. They are the jinn who in Arabian, and one night we can see that there is the jinn who helps the hero to fly and go to other places, and there is the jinn who will try to kill you and or transform you to other to animals or something like that. So those are jinn.
All right, thank you. I noticed a question in the chat from Rivers STLCC from our St. Louis Community College community. Have Arabic science fiction authors faced criticism, censorship, or repression, whether from religious or political groups, because of their social commentary?
Okay, there was an incident some years ago that a college student was arrested because he had with him a copy of 1984 by George Orwell. He was just a reader, not a writer. You can imagine what would happen to writers if they try to critique the government or the regime. I remember some years ago there was a graphic novel called Metro, and the author was arrested and they was present in a court because of their novel that you can't critique this or you can't say that or something. So I know a friend who wrote a dystopian novel since 2015. Until this day, he is afraid to publish it because what will happen to him if you see that. In the past year, there was more censorship than ever. There was a censorship on Facebook posts. You can walk in the street and a cab will stop you and ask you, okay, show me your Facebook. And he will go through your Facebook. And if you post something you don't like, okay, off to the police station and then to the prison, and you may never come back again. So I think this is not a healthy atmosphere for writers, of course, and especially if you write about dystopia. In dystopia, we call this this literature in Arabic the rotten city literature. So you can imagine if you try to imagine Egypt as this. You can't say this is bad. You have to say this is the best things that happened to Egypt since 2011. This is the best government ever. You have to say that, or you are a man of the evil people, as the president say. We have to hide our project so this evil person can't try to sabotage them or do something about them. So we are evil in the eyes of the government if we try to critique them.
Thank you. There's another direction I'd like to go as we come to the end of my questions, and I still welcome questions in the chat. It's about your children's stories and your children's literature, because it's interesting to me that you write the science fiction and dystopia, but then have a very a very intentional you have very intentional work for children, and I just want to ask you more about that. How do you switch your focus, your mind focus between the two?
Yes, I can see. It may seem very strange to write about this grim future and the like this happy little stories for children, but actually, like Stanley once said, when he asks him, how do you focus on the age of your reader? You write this to what range of from age 10 to 20 or what? He said, I can't do this. I just like what I write. I like to read. And I hopefully, and I only can hope that people who read it will love it too. I think I do just like him. I write what I love to read. When I was a little kid, I liked this stories of this happy little stories of Red Riding Hood and Alice in Wonderland. And when I grew up, I wanted to write them because I love to read these stories to this day. I recently began to translate fairy tales because I grew up with fairy tales, so I want to translate them to introduce the Arabic readers to more culture in fairy tales. So when I want to write a story for children, I sit down and I open the Word, Microsoft Word, and say, okay, don't think about politics, don't think about anything of that, just write a happy little story that you will love to read, and hopefully children, when they read it, they will love it too.
That's wonderful. It sounds like then I did not know that about your grandmother's story. So you're carrying on her tradition in a way by telling stories to others as well. So that's great. I noticed a question in the chat about if I understand that correctly. Okay, that was about the difference between Arab science fiction and global. There's one by, is that Julie? I think, Julie? Would you like to ask your question?
Sure, yes. Hi, I'm July Blaylock. I am a PhD candidate at SOAS University of London. And I think your work sounds so interesting. Thank you so much for speaking with us. I was just wondering, in a general context where at least I have seen, most Arabic speakers don't use Arabic for scientific matters or even for medical matters. Do you think that this wave of Arabic science fiction has changed people's perception of the language and how scientific and theoretical the language can be?
Thank you for the question. It's a very interesting one. So in Egypt, we used to learn science in English when you grow up. So you want to study in medical college or in engineering college, so you will study in English. So most of the of the words, you know, to use in this scientific field will be English. So there was no scientific language used in Arabic. We have to use the words, something like electron. We use this same word in Arabic. So, but there was some tries to make this word or find Arabic words to convey this meaning. So we use the word kahraba for electricity. So what about, we can say about electrons, they say kahrab, something from kahraba, which is electricity. But this tries didn't flourish. It is very narrow in the usage of the in scientific fields and so on. So you will find electron, proton, no Arabic equivalent for this word yet. So when I translate science fiction from English to Arabic, I face many problems. I don't want to. In English, you can okay, you will use a new words from English. Okay, Asimov in Foundation, he used the word televisor for a way to communicate with image and voice, not only voice like telephone. So he called it televisor. If I wrote it in Arabic, televisor, people will think it's something like television, and we don't have the word to the word tele in Arabic. It's actually two words, hambot, two words. So it's a problem to try to think of new words to use in science fiction. I face it a lot in translating science fiction because there is no Arabic words for that. So some words I try to think about it and try to mix the words of Arabic with something of some ancient forms of Arabic. So something like in the novel of Mortal Engines, I actually was working on translating it. I couldn't work on it for some reason or other. So some other person worked on it. But I have this word of engineerium. Engineerium from engineering. So it's mixing English and Latin. Okay, I want to translate it into Arabic. Engineering in Arabic is handasa. And there's some word, some Syrian language, they called it اللغة السريانية. It's the language that was before the Arabic language. So they use some it's called Syriac language, sorry. So they use some words, there's some words in Quran from this language, something we
Oh no,
Oh,
that was
no.
so interesting.
It was. I was thinking how rich the language is and can be, not only with what he was saying, but then when you think about local dialects and you know, there's just I probably have a 1,000 more questions, but I hope we get him back just so we can ask a couple more. But that was an excellent question, July. Thank you. Thank you. Do others, while we're waiting for Ahmed to join us for his closing remarks, does anyone else have something you would like for me to ask? I know I have a couple I might want to put to him before we finish. Anyone else? Feel free to share links of your own interests or work in the chat. I think we have quite a few interesting writers and scholars here as well. And I would definitely be interested in following up on some of your work that you are doing. So let me see if we have Ahmed back. I see there's a new message. Yes. Okay, well, we may have lost him. Okay. Imad, are you in touch with Ahmed through text?
I'm on Facebook, but he hasn't replied to anything.
Oh,
Check again.
okay. Maybe he's lost his connection. So, well, this has been, I think, very enlightening to me to learn a bit more about Ahmed Salah Al-Mahdi. And since he's not back with us, Imad, do you mind if I lean on you as our other notable Egyptian writer, sci-fi writer? What are your closing thoughts on, oh, here comes Ahmed. But I'll ask you too, Imad, what are your closing thoughts on Egyptian science
I'm
today?
sorry again. I don't know what's happening.
Okay, I'll keep it.
That's fine. Oh, I was chatting with Imad quickly to just ask him his some of his closing thoughts on Egyptian science fiction. Arabic.
The Cairo International Book Fair this year, I was very surprised about the number of science fiction and fantasy works. Almost everywhere, not just in specialized bookshops that dealt with fantasy and SF. So it's finally gaining traction and getting a following, and it's stuff that's adventure stories and action as well as the more deep stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And concerning dystopia, oh sorry.
Oh no, go ahead.
Concerning dystopia, as luck would have it, with dumb luck, I'd attended a lecture for a book signing for Ibrahim Nasrallah, the Palestinian author, surrealist Palestinian author. Is it Ibrahim Nasrallah?
Mm-hmm. Nasrallah? Yes.
Yeah, the Third War of the Dog, if you remember. Let me check. I got it here. Check.
Interesting. So,
the Second War of the Dog. Ibrahim Nasrallah, yes. And one of the people in the audience said, the novel 1984 and the power state. So I said, we as Arabs, we know that the state, as powerful as it is, it falls apart when the new state takes its place. Mm-hmm. So we as Arabs have a more realistic appraisal of dystopia than foreigners, than Westerners.
Oh, okay. More realistic.
And I find reading some of, I only read a minimal amount of Egyptian dystopia, including Mumtaz Hassanein, his novella 2063. Again, there's the whole thing there about the bureaucratic incompetence, and you can pay off informers and pay government inspectors to look the other way, and these kind of things. So we can cope with it more. We don't lose hope, actually, despite the grindness of it all.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Thank you for those remarks. And I wanted to come back to Ahmed as we close out. Thank you for your patience, everyone. We've gone a little over our hour, but Ahmed, what closing remarks would you like to leave us with? And what advice do you have for other writers of science fiction in general?
Uh, the first advice is to read a lot. Read for Asimov and Ray Bradbury and all this amazing Arthur C. Clarke and all these amazing science fiction writers. You will learn a lot. So the first advice is to read a lot. The second advice is to write a lot. You should try to, you think this idea, okay, it might not work, but you have to try, put it on paper and then give it more thought. So Ray Bradbury actually said that you should write short story every week. At the end of the year, you will have about 50 short stories. Some of them you can expand into novels or series. So reading and writing are the best advice. Also, science fiction are based on scientific ideas. So you should look into the new theories of science and just try to imagine how can I work this out in my short story or in my novel. So there is this a quantum computer they are talking about. It does not work perfectly right now, but it may work in the future. So I should be a step ahead of science. Okay, I will see that this quantum computer is working. They are talking about using Dyson spheres to harvest the sun energy or other stars. But what will we can do through this invention? Okay, I saw in one of a scientific video, he said that if we could harness the whole energy of the sun, we can upload our consciousness of all the human race into a computer and live in a simulation in a paradise. So you will not worry about anything in the simulation. I find it interesting. I can write a short story or a novel about this idea of people living in simulation while the sun is being harvested for energy. What happened if an alien invasion came and found this? We are all in this simulation and there is this Dyson sphere, and we can they cut the energy and use it for their own, or what will we do? So keeping up with scientific news and new theories will help a lot of science fiction authors. That is what I can see.
Okay, that's wonderful advice. That's wonderful advice. Okay, well, I want to thank everyone who has joined us today. I'm sure that if you have further questions for Mr. Almadi or myself, feel free to reach out, and I'll try to direct your question to him if you don't already have his links. I had placed links to his website and Facebook page up at the top of our chat. So otherwise, thank you for a wonderful session, Ahmed. And I hope everyone stays safe and healthy and well. And thank you to Imad for joining us. I'm very honored to have you, Ahmed. Thank you.
The honor is mine.
Okay. Everyone stay safe. Have a good day. Okay. Bye-bye.
Goodbye.
Goodbye. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
And I will talk to everyone soon. Thank you. Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.